Hola y bienvenido. Hello and welcome to the 7th lesson of The Spanish Tutor. In today's lesson, we will be talking about gender in the Spanish language. First, we will go over gender with nouns and then move on to talking about adjectives. Let's talk about gender and articles. If I wanted to say a or some followed by a masculine noun, we would use un and unos. Repeat after me. Un and unos. If I wanted to say the followed by a masculine noun, we would use el and los, where el is if the noun is singular and los for if the noun is plural. Repeat after me. El and los. If I wanted to say a or some followed by a feminine noun, we would use una and unas. One more time. Una and unas. If I wanted to say the followed by a feminine noun, we would use la and las, where la is if the noun is singular and las for if the noun is plural. Let's go over that again. La and las. Let's look at some examples of nouns and their genders. Masculine nouns normally end in the letter O. For example, libro, the Spanish word for book. There are some exceptions where they might end in a, which is normally the case for feminine nouns. For example, sistema, the Spanish word for system. Some masculine nouns can also end in consonants. For example, paraguas, the Spanish word for umbrella. Moving on to feminine nouns. Feminine nouns normally end in a. For example, casa, the Spanish word for house. There are some exceptions where they might end in o, which is normally the case for masculine nouns. For example, mano, the Spanish word for hand. Some feminine nouns can also end in consonants. For example, estación, the Spanish word for station. Now let's talk about gender with adjectives. Adjectives are also assigned genders in Spanish, corresponding to the gender of the noun they are describing. Let's look at some examples. Some adjectives end in a vowel. For example, antiguo, the Spanish word for old. If this adjective is describing a masculine singular noun, it should end in o, i.e. antiguo. If this adjective is describing a masculine plural noun, it should end in os, i.e. antiguos. If this adjective is describing a feminine singular noun, it should end in a, i.e. antigua. If this adjective is describing a feminine plural noun, it should end in as, i.e. antiguas. Let's look at an example of a phrase. The old house in Spanish would be la casa antigua. One more time. The old house would be la casa antigua. Some adjectives end in a consonant. For example, azul, the Spanish word for blue. If this adjective is describing a masculine singular noun, it should keep the same ending, i.e. azul. If this adjective is describing a masculine plural noun, we add an es, i.e. azules. If this adjective is describing a feminine singular noun, it should keep the same ending, i.e. azul. If this adjective is describing a feminine plural noun, we also add an es, i.e. azules. Let's look at an example of a phrase. Some blue books in Spanish would be unos libros azules. One more time. Some blue books would be unos libros azules. And that concludes the video on gender in the Spanish language. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please don't hesitate to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Turn on post notifications so that you are notified when I upload. Adios!